So then what it does is it tries to reach out for conceptual tools. It's trying to it knows what it wants. Now it's trying to find out how to get there, kind of deal. And so what it did is look to revitalize this Neoplatonism, a version of idealism with roots in the 3rd century. Took bits and pieces of Plato's thoughts from the Greek schools and spiced it up with Eastern pantheism. From the diverse sources, Neoplatonism crafted a big tent worldview. You might think of it as the New Age movement. That's kind of where it comes from. So, I'm sure you look through of crystals and auras and all those things where it's talking about how your aura affects your digestion, or how holding this crystal will help you find love. That type of
magic.
Yeah, meddling between the two, the two things is having something like crystals saying, here are the physical kind of aspect of holding the crystal, and it imbues your body through with crystal
so it represents something else,
right?
That kind of thing,
right. And so like a fountain cascading down, there are multiple levels. One emanated descending series that flow down through several levels for spiritual entities to human beings, then to sentient creatures like animals, living things like plants, even things like water. Taking photos of still shots of water and getting emotions from water, and you could freeze water, and you have an emotion of negative energy in there. And I mean, it was done with plants too. So kind of like this Gaia theory is embedded in here. If you ever kind of had the Final Fantasy type stuff, comes from here. Yeah. So what attracted the Romanticist to Neoplatonism was the idea that nature is permeated by soul or spirit. For idealists, says Eagleton, the absolute, capital A, served as a form of secularized divinity that was not a personal God who thinks, feels, wills, and acts. It was a non-personal spiritual essence or substance, the soul of the whole of the eternal one.
Wow, right. And so what she says next is then that Hegel takes this Neoplatonism idea, right?
And he runs with it.
Yeah, he gives it a little twist, right, and adds the concept of historical development or evolution, right? Until, he says, until then, the ladder of life had been static. It was a fixed list or an inventory of the things that existed in the universe. But with Hegel, the ladder became dynamic, right? And so to picture the change, you might think, she says, of a ladder tilting over to become an escalator with the entire universe progressing upward through a series of stages. And of course, he called his pantheistic deity the absolute spirit or the universal mind, right? And because it was the soul of the world, it was said to evolve along with the world. Right. So we're getting way out there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll cover it a little bit, but it's kind of like a touchstone of it's okay to own people as long as you don't beat them to death. And that's fine for it right now. And then as it progresses along, it too is changing, developing somehow. And then at some point, the spiritual nature of man says, no, owning people is wrong, straight out, and so on and so forth. And so we'll get into that more.
Yeah. So basically what Hegel did was he applied the concept of evolution not to biology but to the world of ideas, right? So ideas are evolving, this soul, this ultimate soul, this absolute spirit, universal mind is evolving along with everything else, right? That's kind of his addition onto this Neoplatonism.
Advancing towards a final perfect state. And so, you do see this too in some like science fiction books is humanity improves itself so much so that it becomes incorporeal and becomes just pure energy, and with it can live transcendent in this kind of perfect state. So at least in the sci-fi that I read sometimes.
Yes.